October 26, 2006. Pacific Ocean, 500 miles east of Okinawa. Commander Anders Grenstad grips the periscope handles, rotates slowly, scanning the horizon. Empty ocean, grey skies. Nothing unusual. Then he turns 30 degrees east and freezes. Through the lens he sees 1 aircraft carrier, 2 guided missile cruisers, 6 destroyers, to attack submarines somewhere below. $9 billion of American naval power, 5,000 sailors, 75 aircraft, and they have no idea he's there. This is HMS Gotland, a diesel submarine that costs less than a single F-35 fighter jet. And for the next 3 weeks, it will do something that terrifies every naval power on Earth. It will prove that aircraft carriers can be sunk. This is the story of when submariners looked through the periscope and saw the impossible. Aircraft carriers are called supercarriers for a reason. They're not just ships, they're floating cities. The USS Ronald Reagan, 1,092 feet long, nuclear-powered, carries 90 aircraft, crew of 5,000. It's escorted by a carrier strike group, cruisers with Aegis missile systems, destroyers with anti-submarine warfare capabilities, attack submarines prowling below, and surveillance aircraft overhead. Together, they create what the Navy calls a defensive bubble, hundreds of miles of radar coverage, sonar, arrays, and aerial patrols. In theory, nothing gets through. But there's a problem. Submarines don't care about theory. Since World War II, submarines have been the ultimate carrier killers. In 1982, the Argentine cruiser general Belgrano was sunk by a British submarine during the Falklands War. 1 torpedo, 323 dead. In 1971, an Indian submarine bottled up the entire Pakistani Navy in Karachi Harbor during the Indo-Pakistani War. And during the Cold War, Soviet submarines stalked American carrier groups constantly. But here's what most people don't know. American submarines did the exact same thing, and they got terrifyingly close. This is the story of 3 incidents, 3 moments when submarines penetrated the most sophisticated naval defenses in history, and proved that the most expensive weapons in the world can be defeated by silence. 1985, North Atlantic. The Soviet Navy has just deployed the Kiev-class carrier, Novorossiysk, their answer to American supercarriers. It's escorted by destroyers, frigates, and submarines. A full battle group, and the US Navy wants to know, can we kill it? Enter USS Parche, a modified Sturgeon-class attack submarine. Fast, quiet, armed with Mark 48 torpedoes that can sink anything afloat. Its mission, shadow the Soviet carrier group. Get close enough to simulate a torpedo attack. Prove that American submarines can penetrate Soviet defenses. The captain's name remains classified, but his account was declassified in 2004. For 11 days, the Parche follows the Soviet group, 400 yards below the surface, silent running, moving at barely 5 knots to avoid detection. Soviet sonar sweeps constantly. Active pings echo through the water, but the Parche stays in the acoustic shadow, the dead zone beneath the carrier where sonar can't penetrate. It's like hiding in someone's blind spot while driving. Except, if you're caught, you start World War III. On day 12, the Parche rises to periscope depth. 300 hours, pitch black. The captain orders, up scope, and through the lens, he sees the Soviet carrier to 2,000 yards away. Close enough to see sailors on deck. Close enough to count aircraft. Close enough to kill it. In a real war, this is the moment. Set depth, 12 feet. Firing solution calculated. Tubes 1 and 2 ready to mark 48 torpedoes, wire-guided, impossible to intercept. The carrier would have maybe 90 seconds warning before impact, and by then, it's already over. But this isn't a war. It's intelligence gathering. The Apache takes photographs through the periscope, logs the carrier's radar signature, records propeller acoustics. Then it slips away, undetected. The Soviets never knew it was there, but the Pentagon did, and the report that came back was classified top secret for 20 years, because it contained one sentence that changed everything. Carrier groups are vulnerable to submarine attack at ranges previously considered safe. In other words, the Navy's most powerful weapon could be sunk by its oldest enemy. And if an American submarine could do it to the Soviets, what could Soviet submarines do to American carriers? The answer came 4 years later, 1989, Mediterranean Sea. A Soviet Akula-class attack submarine tracked the USS Eisenhower carrier group for 6 days. The US Navy didn't detect it until the submarine intentionally surfaced just 3 miles from the carrier. A message, a warning. We can get this close whenever we want. It was one of the most embarrassing moments in US naval history, and it forced a complete overhaul of carrier defense doctrine. But the lesson was clear. In submarine warfare, the hunter becomes the hunted, and you never know which one you are until it's too late. 2005. San Diego, California. The US Navy has a problem. Diesel submarines, the kind used by China, North Korea, Iran, are getting quieter, smaller, harder to detect, and the Navy needs to know, can a modern carrier group defend against them? So they make a deal with Sweden. Sweden operates the Gotland-class submarine, a revolutionary design using a wind-dependent propulsion. It can stay submerged for weeks without surfacing, and it's nearly silent. Here's how it worked. The Gotland is tiny, only 200 feet long, crew of 25, no nuclear reactor, no massive propellers. It runs on diesel-electric batteries and a Stirling engine that's so quiet. Sonar operators describe its acoustic signature as a whisper in a hurricane. During the first week of war games, the Ronald Reagan deployed to Los Angeles-class attack submarines, 4 destroyers with active sonar, multiple P-3 Orion anti-submarine aircraft, sonobuoys covering hundreds of square miles. Their mission, find one Swedish submarine. They failed. For 3 weeks, the Gotland operated inside the carrier's defensive perimeter. It shadowed the strike group, logged their patrol patterns, memorized their sonar frequencies, and on day 22, it struck, simulated torpedo launch, point-blank range. In a real war, the Ronald Reagan would be at the bottom of the Pacific. Cost to build a Nimitz-class carrier, $4.5 billion. Cost to build HMS Gotland, $100 million. The Navy was furious and terrified. Because if a Swedish training submarine could do this, what could the Chinese Navy do in the Taiwan Strait? The Gotland's success exposed something the Navy didn't want to admit. Modern diesel submarines are harder to detect than nuclear submarines. Why? Because nuclear submarines need constant cooling. Their reactors create heat signatures. Their pumps create noise. But diesel-electric submarines, when they run on batteries, they're essentially silent. They don't emit heat. They don't create bubbles. They're small enough to hide in thermal layers of the ocean. On sonar, they sound like ... nothing, and that makes them the perfect carrier killers. After the war games, the US Navy leased HMS Gotland for 2 more years. not to fight it, to study it. They needed to learn how to hunt submarines they couldn't hear. The scariest thing about carrier hunting isn't the attack, it's the waiting. You're 400 meters below 5,000 sailors, and they have no idea you exist. You could end their world in 60 seconds, but you just ... wait and listen, and hope they don't drop a torpedo on your head before you're ready to fire. That's the reality of submarine warfare. Not action movies, not explosions, just silence and patience, and the knowledge that someone, somewhere, might be doing the same thing to you. October 26, 2006, East China Sea. The USS Kitty Hawk Carrier Strike Group is conducting routine operations. Routine ... until it isn't. At 8:47 a.m., a Chinese Song-class diesel submarine surfaces, distance from the carrier, 5 miles, well within torpedo range. The carrier group's reaction: shock, panic, embarrassment. Because nobody, not the destroyers, not the submarines, not the aerial patrols, detected the Chinese sub until it intentionally revealed itself. This wasn't a war game. This wasn't a training exercise. This was a live operational carrier group in contested waters, and a Chinese submarine had penetrated its defenses without being detected. The Pentagon classified the incident secret for 6 months. When the details finally leaked to the press, the Washington Post called it the worst failure of US anti-submarine warfare in a generation. Admirals were questioned, procedures were reviewed, and the question everyone asked was, why did they surface? Why reveal themselves? Because it wasn't about sinking the carrier. It was about sending a message. China was saying, we can reach your carriers whenever we want, and you won't see us coming. It was psychological warfare, strategic intimidation, and it worked. Because from that moment on, every US carrier operating near Taiwan had to assume there's a submarine out there, watching, waiting, and we have no idea where it is. The 2006 incident changed US Navy doctrine. Carrier strike groups now deploy with more attack submarines, at least 2 per group. Advanced P-8 Poseidon anti-submarine aircraft. Continuous sonar sweeps, active and passive. Multi-static sonar networks using drones and unmanned vessels. But here's the problem. Submarines are still getting quieter. China now operates the Type 039C submarine. Newer, quieter, and equipped with long-range torpedoes that can strike from 30 miles away. Russia has the Kilo class, so quiet that NATO nicknamed them black holes because they disappear on sonar. And Iran operates modified Kilo submarines in the narrow waters of the Persian Gulf, where carriers are most vulnerable. The cat and mouse game continues, but the advantage is shifting. So how do you defend a carrier against an invisible enemy? The answer: you don't. Not completely, because submarine warfare is a game of probabilities, not certainties. Here's what the Navy does now. Layer 1, outer defense 200 plus miles. P-28 Poseidon aircraft dropping sonobuoys, MH-60R helicopters with dipping sonar. Satellites tracking submarine communication signals. Layer 2, mid-defense, 50 to 200 miles. Attack submarines prowling ahead of the carrier. Destroyers using active sonar even though it reveals their position. Unmanned underwater drones mapping thermal layers. Layer 3, close defense 0 to 50 miles. Continuous active sonar from the carrier itself. Helicopter patrols every 30 minutes. Torpedoes ready to launch at any contact. But even with all this, submarines still get through, because the ocean is vast, and submarines are small. Think about it like this. The Pacific Ocean covers 63 million square miles. A modern submarine is about 300 feet long. Finding a submarine in the Pacific is like finding a single needle in an area the size of Asia, and that needle is specifically designed not to be found. So the Navy's strategy isn't to find every submarine. It's to make attacking a carrier so difficult and so risky that no sane submarine commander would try it. Because if you fire torpedoes at a carrier, you reveal your position. And within seconds, every ship, submarine, and aircraft in the strike group knows exactly where you are. You might sink the carrier, but you're definitely not making it home. That's the reality of modern submarine warfare. It's not about who has the better technology. It's about who's willing to take the risk. And in peacetime, no one fires. But in wartime, that calculation changes. And that's what keeps carrier admirals awake at night. Because they know, somewhere out there, right now, there's probably a submarine. Watching, waiting, just like HMS Gotland did. Just like that Chinese Song class did. And the only reason they know about those submarines, is because they chose to reveal themselves. How many others are out there that didn't? There's an old submariners saying, there are two types of ships, submarines, and targets. It's dark humor, but there's truth in it. Because no matter how powerful a surface ship is, no matter how many escorts it has, how advanced its radar, how many aircraft it carries, it's still visible. But a submarine chooses when to be seen. And that choice, that control over the moment of revelation, is the ultimate power in naval warfare. The commanders who looked through those periscopes didn't just see enemy ships. They saw vulnerability. They saw the illusion of invincibility shattered. They saw the moment when billions of dollars of steel and technology ... meant nothing. Because they had the one thing that matters most: surprise. Since HMS Gotland's war games in 2005, the US Navy has spent over $12 billion on anti-submarine warfare. New sonar, new aircraft, new drones, new tactics, and yet, submarines keep getting through. In 2015, a Swedish submarine again sank a US carrier during NATO exercises. In 2018, a French submarine penetrated US carrier defenses during training operations. In 2021, a British submarine did the same. Every time, the Navy learns, adapts, improves. But the truth is, and this is something they'll never say publicly, you can't make a carrier group submarine-proof. You can only make it submarine-resistant. Because the ocean is the submarine's domain, not ours. And maybe that's the real lesson here. We build these incredible machines, supercarriers, Aegis cruisers, stealth destroyers. We deploy them with thousands of sailors and billions of dollars in technology. We call them power projection, naval dominance, super weapons, but in the end, they're still just ships, floating on the surface, visible, trackable, vulnerable, and somewhere below, in the cold, dark silence, there's always a submarine. Watching, waiting, with a captain gripping the periscope handles, rotating slowly, scanning the horizon. And when he sees that carrier group through the lens, he knows something that every surface sailor fears. I could end this right now, but he doesn't, not today, because today is peacetime, but tomorrow is why he's there. He looked through the periscope and saw an entire carrier group, and the carrier group never saw him. That's submarine warfare. Silent, patient, terrifying. And the reason why, no matter how powerful your navy is, you're never truly safe at sea.